My child, stop everything you are doing right now. Do not let another second carry you past these words, because what is about to be placed before your heart was not assembled casually. Something moved in the unseen realm today. Something shifted in a direction that involves you directly. And heaven has sent this message not to frighten you, not to overwhelm you, but to prepare you. Because what is approaching your life in the next 24 hours is something your heart needs to be ready to receive. Your soulmate is about to reach out to you. Not someday. Not eventually. Not when circumstances become more convenient or fear becomes more manageable. Soon. The preparation has already begun on their side. The decision has already been made in a place deeper than conscious thought. And before that moment arrives, before their name appears in a way that catches your breath, heaven wanted you to understand why this is happening now and what it truly means. Stay here. Do not rush forward. Every word of this message is part of the preparation your heart needs. For a long time, something stood between your soulmate and the honest conversation that has been waiting to happen. It was not a lack of feeling. It was never that. What stood between you was something far more complicated than indifference. It was the weight of everything they felt and did not know how to carry responsibly. It was the fear that speaking truthfully might cost them the very connection they were trying to protect. It was the belief, quiet but persistent, that silence was somehow safer than honesty. But heaven does not allow important truths to remain buried forever. There is a point in every sacred connection when the unseen begins applying gentle but undeniable pressure. When the distance that once felt manageable begins feeling unbearable. When the silence that once felt protective begins feeling like the very thing that is destroying what it was meant to preserve. Your soulmate has reached that point. And the pressure that has been building inside them has finally reached the place where reaching out to you is no longer a question of whether. It has become a question of when. The answer to that question is now. Do not skip this moment. What is being revealed here is more important than it may first appear. Something happened recently that your soulmate did not expect. It did not arrive dramatically. It did not arrive with a warning or an announcement. It arrived the way most life-changing moments arrive, quietly, in the middle of an ordinary day, disguised as something almost insignificant. Yet the effect it produced inside them was anything but small. In a single moment, everything they had been telling themselves about why the silence made sense collapsed completely. Every reason they had used to justify the distance suddenly sounded hollow. Every excuse that had once felt reasonable suddenly felt like exactly what it always was. An excuse. They stood completely still in that moment. Not because they were confused. Because they were finally, completely, undeniably clear. Stay with this message. Something extraordinary is still approaching. The clarity your soulmate experienced was not comfortable. True clarity rarely is. Because with clarity comes responsibility. Once you truly understand what you feel, once the fog of self-protection lifts and leaves you standing in the full light of your own honest emotions, you can no longer pretend not to know. You can no longer move through your days as though the feeling does not exist. You can no longer choose silence without understanding exactly what that silence is costing you. Your soulmate understands that cost now. And it is a cost they are no longer willing to pay. There is something they realized in that quiet moment of clarity that heaven wants you to know before they reach out. They realized that every day of silence had not protected either of you. It had only increased the distance between what was real and what was being lived. It had only made the honest conversation more necessary and more difficult simultaneously. It had only allowed space for misunderstandings to grow in the absence of truth. Every day they waited was not a neutral choice. It was a day in which your heart was left without an answer it deserved. That realization humbled them in a way they did not anticipate. Pause here. The next layer of this revelation requires your full attention. Your soulmate has been carrying a specific image in their mind for several days now. It is not a dramatic image. It is a simple one. But it has returned to them again and again with a persistence they cannot ignore. In this image they see themselves reaching out to you. They see the message being written and sent. They see the moment of vulnerability that follows, the waiting, the uncertainty, the exposure of having finally said what needed to be said. And in this image they feel something they have not felt in a very long time. Relief. Not the relief of having resolved everything. Not the relief of guaranteed outcomes. The relief of no longer carrying alone what was always meant to be spoken aloud. The relief of finally choosing honesty over the exhausting performance of not caring. The relief of allowing their heart to speak with the same directness it has been speaking to them in private for far longer than you know. That image of relief has become the reason they are ready to reach out now instead of waiting for another season of false comfort. Do not move away yet. Heaven has not finished preparing your heart. There are several things your soulmate intends to say when they reach out. They may not say all of them in the first message. The first message may be simple. It may appear almost casual on the surface. It may begin with something that sounds ordinary. But do not be deceived by the smallness of the opening. Behind every first sentence is everything that made saying it necessary. And behind this first sentence is more than you may immediately realize. They intend to acknowledge the silence. Not with a dismissive explanation but with genuine accountability. They have been thinking about how the distance must have felt from your side. They have been imagining the questions you carried that they alone could have answered. They have been sitting with the discomfort of knowing that their fear created confusion in someone who deserved clarity. That accountability is not a performance. It is the result of weeks of honest reflection that your soulmate has been doing quietly and privately. Stay until the end. There is still something hidden that has not yet been revealed. They also intend to tell you something they have told no one else. Something that became undeniable during the season of distance. Something that every attempt at distraction only confirmed more clearly. During the time they were away from direct contact with you, they discovered that the connection between you was not something they could simply decide to move past. They tried. Not with cruelty. With genuine effort. They told themselves that time would create new emotional priorities. They waited for something or someone to fill the space your presence had occupied in their thoughts. Nothing did. Every experience was quietly measured against the memory of what existing near you had felt like. Every new conversation was unconsciously compared to the ease and depth they had felt with you. Every moment of joy carried a faint undercurrent of awareness that one specific person was missing from it. They could not manufacture what had existed naturally between you. And eventually they stop trying to pretend that was possible. Do not skip what comes next. This is the part that changes the entire story. Your soulmate made a decision 3 days ago that no one around them knows about. It was not announced. It was not discussed. It formed in the quiet of a private moment when they finally stopped arguing with themselves about what the right thing to do was. They decided to stop letting fear write the ending of a story that their heart was still actively living. They decided that the version of themselves who chose silence was not the version they wanted to continue being. They decided that you deserved honesty and that delivering that honesty was no longer optional. That decision has been gathering momentum ever since. Every hour that has passed since that quiet moment has added weight to the intention. Every reminder of you that crossed their path confirmed the direction. Every morning they woke up still carrying the unspoken truth brought them one day closer to the moment they would finally set it down in the only place it belonged. In an honest conversation with you. That moment is arriving within the next 24 hours. Pause here. Because what heaven wants you to understand about this timing is important. The 24 hours is not an arbitrary number. It reflects the internal countdown your soulmate is already feeling without fully understanding why the urgency has become so precise. Something in their spirit knows that the window of perfect readiness is now. Not next week. Not after one more conversation with themselves about whether the timing is right. Now. The preparation is complete. The clarity is present. The decision has been made. All that remains is the courage to press send on what has already been written in their heart. And that courage is already forming. You can trust that. But heaven is also preparing you because the way you receive this matters. Not for their sake alone. For yours. You have spent a season developing a relationship with your own peace that is more valuable than you may currently recognize. You have learned things about yourself during the silence that the noise of an unresolved connection had previously prevented you from hearing. You have grown in ways that are real and lasting and worthy of protection. So when your soulmate reaches out, heaven does not want you to abandon everything you have built in your spirit simply because a long-awaited moment has finally arrived. Receive it with the fullness of who you have become. Not with the brokenness of who you were when the silence began. Stay close to these words. The final revelation is approaching. There is one more thing your soulmate will be bringing when they reach out. It is beneath the words they choose and beneath the tone they use and beneath whatever opening they select. It is the thing that made the reaching out necessary in the first place. It is the reason no amount of time or distance or distraction was sufficient to dissolve the connection. It is the truth that every excuse and every wall and every season of silence was ultimately unable to contain. They love you. With the full weight of everything that word carries when it is spoken by someone who has tried to live without the feeling and discovered that living without it is not actually living. With the honesty of someone who spent a long season trying to convince themselves otherwise and arrived at the undeniable conclusion that otherwise is simply not true. With the humility of someone who knows they are arriving late with a truth that should have been spoken earlier and who is choosing to arrive anyway because the alternative is unacceptable. That love is what you will feel beneath the first message. Even before they say it directly. Even before the conversation reaches the depth it is moving toward. You will feel it because your heart has always recognized theirs even when your mind was still asking questions. My beloved child, Heaven is not telling you this to make you anxious. It is not telling you this to fill you with anticipation that becomes a distraction. It is telling you this so that when the moment arrives, when the notification appears or the phone rings or the message finds its way to you, your heart will not be caught off guard. Your spirit will not scramble to protect itself from something it already recognized. You will not mistake the arrival of honesty for another beginning of confusion. You will simply know. This is the moment. This is what all the waiting was preparing you to receive with clarity instead of desperation. The next 24 hours carry something real. Something that has been in motion far longer than its arrival will suggest. Something that heaven has been quietly arranging in the spaces between everything visible. Remain grounded. Remain in the peace you have built. Remain the version of yourself that the silence shaped into someone stronger than who you were before it began. Because that is exactly the person your soulmate is reaching out to find. And they are almost there.